Well, welcome to a little update with Chris Robertshaw. Not a usual surroundings. In fact, you might hear people talking downstairs. We're using a friend's place here that is normally used for other things, entertainment-wise. But I'm on the move, so for a few months anyway, weeks at least, I won't be in my usual place. But anyway, Chris.
The mobile reporter.
Yeah, you really wanted, you've been so itching to do so many different things. But one that really is hit the button for you is the usual thing we might say.
Well, the
usual suspects.
The one that's really hit me, of course, is Treasury. But things keep happening, and we have to today, I'm afraid, go back to the AGs. Remember, we did a piece on the AGs recently.
Yeah. The
concept of AG's members actually ending up sitting inside the Employment Tribunal, which we took huge exception to. It's getting worse, Paul.
Worse?
It's getting much worse. First of all, soon after that interview you did with me, I was contacted to say, did you not know that there's actually now 2 members of AG sitting on the Employment Tribunal, which is just ridiculous. But it gets worse again. And I now want to talk to you, and this is a really serious subject. I'm sorry that I'm the only person constantly going on about the AG's department.
People won't say you're fixated now. You wear that. Some people might.
Well, yes, they would say that in ignorance, because the AG's department is damaging government, the way it's being allowed to run.
Right.
And on the 8th of August, Douglas Stewart, the excellent chairman of the Employment Tribunal, observed on how he thinks things are going with regard to the relationship, if you like, between the function of the Employment Tribunal and the submissions the AGs make regularly. What I'd like to do, if I can just whiz through just one small section of that report to highlight and focus on the essence of what he was saying.
Just remind myself, Douglas Stewart is the guy who takes all those tribunals. We sat through, especially the Dr. Ransom one, he was on that, wasn't he?
Indeed he was.
And he seems to be employed quite often doing that sort of thing, tribunals.
The background thought I would ask people to sort of bear in mind throughout this interview is that the Rosalind Ransom affair was extraordinary in the sense that just for once somebody was capable of standing up against the government, against the AG's department. And what came out of that was just appalling. We all thought, all reasonable and rational people thought, the government would learn from this and reconsider how they were going to run the AG's department. What is actually happening under this Minister of Justice is the reverse is happening. The AG's department is being reinforced, and the Employment Tribunal, as it were, is being blamed for what went wrong. I'll come back to that later, but let's deal with what he said.
He being who?
Douglas Stewart,
Douglas
chairman,
Stewart.
On the 8th of August. Almost inevitably, in every case involving an employee who has worked for Manx Care, the court bundle of documents for use at the substantive hearing is very substantial, hundreds and thousands of pages. So here he's referring to members of Manx Care who've put a claim into the Employment Tribunal, and here he's saying this is what they're up against. This, he says, as to the burden and concerns of complainants when there are warnings of possible cost sanctions following the express likelihood of a hearing lasting many days. Okay, let me interpret that. What he's saying is AGs pile into these complaints with huge documentation to make sure that it becomes complex for the complainant, that it goes on remorselessly for days and days, and at the same time they're making sure that the complainant knows that if they lose there's going to be significant costs. What they're trying to do, they're trying to bully them into walking away.
And I read it that way when I saw this thing. And this is classic way of people, the big institutions dealing with small people, isn't it?
Exactly.
They can afford, especially because it's AGs and government money, they can afford almost anything to do whatever they want against someone who's got to fund their own case, maybe.
And the problem here is that instead of Jane Poole Wilson fulfilling the role of Justice Minister, she is supporting this malpractice. And I take that from a question I posed to her on Mannerline a few days ago, when she simply would not answer the question, wanted to go in another direction. Let me finish this little bit here. Within the past 20 months, more than one complainant, ground down by the burdens, that's his language, ground down by the burdens, has withdrawn their complaint, even though there was a prima facie merit in pleaded cases. In other words, to explain that, for anybody who's not quite sure, it means that when the tribunal looked at the case, it appeared to have merit. Okay. I do not, he says, wish to see complainants ground down by undue formality, particularly if they are funding the litigators themselves through a lawyer or, as is the case quite regularly, are without representation. And he finishes, it is not right that the complainants with a case having prima facie merit should be deprived of their day in court by the unevenness of the playing field. Now, Jane Poole Wilson should be fully aware of that. But what's she doing? When I challenged her on Mannerline, she said, well, I'm going to take something, as it were, on this subject to Tynwald. I'm not sure when she said, whether it was October, November or December. But I understood, she said, that the essence of what she intends to promote in Tynwald is that Douglas Stewart, an excellent chairman, should be replaced by a Deemster.
Oh, really?
So, in other words,
is that definite? Was that the way you read it? Sorry, is that
no? She said to me, she's following the guidance, if you like, from the Richard Wright Casey report on the Rosalind Nancy affair, which said, well, maybe the chairman should be a Deemster. Now, what that was saying, I wouldn't say subtly. It was saying, maybe Douglas Stewart got it wrong. In other words, they simply won't accept the fact that they're wrong. And Jane Poole Wilson isn't saying, no, what we really need to do is amend and adjust our AG services, which is a big bullying organisation. We're going to follow that advice. Now, if Tynwald follow Jane Poole Wilson's guidance and advice, they are further damaging the rights of those who are employed by government. Because what Tynwald will be signalling is a very clear message. Don't complain, don't be a whistleblower, we'll burden you, we'll crush you, and we'll use the AG's department to do it. That's what she's saying. Paul, this is an absolute disgrace.
Just the thing with the Deemster, I mean, they are independent.
Yes.
I feel quite, that they do a good job, but of course, would it be more expensive even still to run a tribunal having a Deemster involved if you had to pay costs?
One of the good parts of our system of government is the fact that I believe our judiciary is independent. Mm-hmm. And yes, I would expect a Deemster to replacing the excellent current chairman to be independent. I'm not. There's no scurrilous suggestion. No. But what I am saying is this, and this is what Douglas Stewart is saying. Look, people, we need to keep these claimant cases as simple and as focused as possible, so that people, quote him, have their day in court.
Yeah.
We don't want to see it burdened with endless 1,000 pages, which is what the AG's department is doing. What you would actually see, I would argue strongly, is that if a Deemster replaced the chairman in the employment tribunal, it moves it closer and closer to the concept of a high court.
Well,
let me finish my point here. Ever more complex, ever more expensive, and Jane Poole Wilson AGs will know full well that they're making it even more difficult for people to have their day in court.
And if it moves into a courtroom, it's a very imposing sort of structure, whereas the tribunals are just held in a much more relaxed sort of
exactly
place.
That is how an employment tribunal is supposed to work.
Yeah.
It's supposed to work differently to a high court. And what governments are trying to do, I think it's shameful. They're trying to make it ever more difficult for employees to speak their mind confidently, knowing now that they'll be brutalised and that the situation will get worse. I was one of the people who worked hard to get the role of Minister of Department of Home Affairs to include the title Justice. But she's not fulfilling a role. She's gone absolutely negative. And she's oppressing, in this case, it's Manx Care employees. Incidentally, in his piece, he refers to 4 cases from Manx Care. The AG's department have got endless resources in tax funds. Is Manx Care paying for that separately, or is it just leaning on it?
Well, it's all out of the same pot at the end of the day. Something I want you to think about. Douglas Stewart, right? We sat through that particular thing with Dr. Ranson, and well, he gave it 2 barrels worth, didn't he? I mean, there was no question the outcome. She was wrong, and punitive damages and all that sort of thing was awarded. Now, do you think they've got the target?
Ranson wasn't at fault. No,
I'm saying he came down on her side completely, and he gave her everything and the damages as well.
Rightly so.
Right. That's what the point is. Do you think almost as like Douglas Stewart is almost like we don't want him around anymore because he's
too good?
Well, I mean, you could see where I'm going with that logic, right? I mean, it's purely just my thoughts on the matter, but he's a great guy. I mean, I really think that guy deserves a medal because he's doing some good work by being so calm and, he isn't swayed one way or the other, is he? He's very, very neutral.
Wilson is misbehaving here, seriously, and it's getting very, very close to a form of corruption.
Wow.
It's deadly serious. Now, the point is, we have a problem with, let's just look at this in isolation here. We have a problem with regard to morale in our health services in Manx Care. What are employees of Manx Care going to say when they become aware of what's happening here? They're going to conclude, well, there's no point me being a whistleblower. There's no point me raising a complaint. They will crush me. So that encourages further misbehaviour in the conduct of government.
But there was a FOI about how much Manx Care paid out in damages to staff, wasn't it?
Half a million,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
Around $500,000. That's no small fry amount of money. So they've settled that, haven't they? They haven't taken that tribunal necessarily, or was that the outcome of the tribunals to give them that money?
I haven't got the detail.
No. But it does show that clearly there have been cases that Manx Care have been at fault.
And this incidentally, the tribunal doesn't obviously simply deal with Manx Care. It deals with all employees. So what I say to the employees of government is don't trust your senior officers. Don't trust what's going on at the top end of government, because despite what they say in Tynwald, they're trying to suppress the rights of individual employees. I think it is beyond disgraceful.
But the Attorney General's department is still your concern, isn't it?
We have to have a major reform of the AG's department.
And let me bring this back to Douglas Stewart and Dr. Ranson, how he really wasn't happy the way they behaved. Let's be as polite as possible.
Yes,
I mean, there was clearly deficiencies in the way and what they did.
You know that I followed this case absolutely every dotted I and crossed T right the way through from the beginning. Let me tell you this now and let people hear this. The only reason that case went to the Employment Tribunal in the first place is that the AGs, full of their arrogance and ability to bully people, thought they could get the better of Rosalind Ranson. When Rosalind Ranson didn't want it to go to the tribunal, what she wanted was for sense and fairness and justice to be dealt with before we got to the point of the Employment Tribunal. It was the AG's brutality and bullying that was determined that it would go that far. But even though there were those of us at the time who were appealing to government, saying, for goodness sake, do not let this go to the Employment Tribunal. It will be very, very bad for the reputation of the Isle of Man. Deal with it sensibly and fairly before it gets there. The AGs brought this upon themselves, determined to get into the tribunal. Why? Because so often, Paul, they get their way because, as the chairman says, they brutalise people.
Well, they didn't play fair. Let's be polite about that. Also, they were proved to to withhold those bundles, they weren't finding all the searches that Dr. Radson found. Clearly, there was major, and we keep coming back to this because those same people are still in the AG's department, we assume. No one's been held accountable for their misconduct. That's probably the best word I can think about. Because if you go to corruption, I don't know, you've used that probably a lot. But
it's erring towards corrupt.
Erring towards, let's do that one. Because, they'll come after people if you're careful, not careful, I suppose. But what's the outcome of this then? Just for Paul Wilson to stop this now? Can she alter it? Can she change things? Or has it gone too far?
Well, she will stand up in Tynwald and presumably wax lyrical about the Richard Wright report, because sadly we're in a situation here where that was it was good in places, Richard Wright report, good in places and frankly very poor in others. But the piper was making sure the tune was played, and Richard Wright came good in the sense that he tried to suggest that the employment tribunal is not working properly. That was the inference, by saying a Deemster should replace the current format. That's what was being inferred. But quietly, right towards the end of the report, he's sort of musing on the facts, as it were, quietly. He says, if the Isle of Man government had been a unified organisation, this would never have got to the tribunal because it would have been dealt with sensibly beforehand.
Okay. I still think what I'm trying to get to is there's a worry in the Isle of Man about our government and our justice. Let's try that.
Yeah, well, that's
because
right.
of we've seen in the past. No one has got anything changed. Therefore, we maybe don't feel 100% certain that things are being done to the book and not.
The point of it, as I got Tynwald to introduce the concept of the Constitutional, Legal and Justice Committee, and they should be onto this as well, by the way. And thereafter, the Constitutional, Legal and Justice Committee recommended that in future there be a Justice Minister, as it were, in the structure to deal with these very things.
Yeah.
Because Tynwald wasn't grasping the nettle at all. I believe that when Jane Poole Wilson takes this to Tynwald will not grasp it the way they need to, and in the process of not grasping it the way they should, they will be letting down all the employees of government, because it'll be further closing the door to fair treatment, to the concept of whistleblowing, and the ability for people fairly and reasonably to have their day in court.
Right. Well, as I said, Douglas Stewart, he's put that out there, and he doesn't do things unless he sees a major problem, in my view, because he's so good. But it'd be interesting to see when he retires what he can tell us about other things, but also what his opinion will be if this does happen.
I think he's trying his hardest to tell us.
I think he is.
Let me just
to finish.
Yeah.
Okay.
To give you the reaction of this organisation, of the senior leaders of Manx Care to Douglas Stewart. I'm going to read it to you. It's appalling. While we are on it, this is their comment now.
Whose comment?
Manx Care.
Manx Care.
Yeah.
Okay.
To Douglas Stewart's comment.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got that.
Yep.
While we are unable to comment on the specifics of an ongoing case, he wasn't referring to a particular ongoing case. He was referring to a set of cases.
Yeah, but that's a standalone say. We're not going to say much at all.
Yeah.
Right.
Listen to this nonsense. We want to reaffirm our commitment to resolving employee concerns and complaints through locally agreed policies and procedures, wherever possible, always aiming to avoid the need for formal legal action. Well, and then they go on to say, we will consider the tribunal's observations, how? In consultation with the Attorney General's office. So the very people who are responsible for deformation of the justice of all of this are going to be the people that Manx Care reform to. So they are effectively in bed with the malpractice of the Attorney General's office because they want to avoid formal legal action, not by conducting themselves properly, but how? By making sure it's expensive, laborious.
So these people will not take it any further.
They won't. They can't take.
And they'll take some money and out that 500,000, the £500,000, that the
Well,
FOI
that's
pulled
what
out.
they did.
No, but I mean, that shows you they've been paying out money, right?
Yeah. Each case brought to our attention, listen to this nonsense, this garbage. I mean, shame on the leaders of Manx Care on this. Each case brought to our attention is assessed on its individual merits and legal advice from the AG's department taken to inform how they are managed. Ensuring all relevant information is shared allows us to follow due process and address matters fairly and thoroughly. But what Douglas Stewart is saying is they're making a complete and utter dog's dinner of it. Yeah. It's a disgrace.
Okay. Well,
I'm not letting go of this Attorney
no,
General's thing.
We'll also do some more next week. I hope you could hear us okay, because obviously there's a lot of noise going on here.
I feel I'm shouting at you.
We're in a temporary situation. I said it's my fault. We haven't got a studio at all.
But
maybe we'll come to your house next time.
Yeah, why not? We are going to deal with the Treasury. I promise.
Treasury.
I keep saying this.
He's on the phone to me all the time. I'm telling you, he's like every day. And I say I've got no where to record it, so this is the best we could do. Anyway, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out.
I'd like to do another one on energy as well.
Energy as well?
Yeah,
okay.
There's loads and loads of stuff going on.
Okay. Well, we're nearly at the year mark for the election as well, aren't we?
Yeah,
It's going to be interesting.
Indeed.